We've got two stories here that I want to talk about. The first is from KUTV. Utah-based Zions Bank opts out of participating in Boise Pride Festival. This was over child drag shows, and Zions Bank issued a statement saying, when we sponsored this, we did not know that they were putting minors in these kind of situations. And then Boise Pride says, oh, minors have always been involved. And it's like...
That's not better.
But this is interesting because it's showing that a corporation is saying we're going to lose money if we go this route, so let's not do it. But at the same time, we have another story. Gaming charity, Games Done Quick, cancels Florida event citing COVID and don't say gay law. So I don't know, what is this? Florida is losing Games Done Quick because of they wouldn't have masks and because of quote unquote don't say gay, the parental rights and education bill. That's a false statement. Don't say gay. I like to call that bill the don't say straight because it has the same effect. And then over in Utah, we're seeing a bank cancel their support for a pride event. So I don't know. At first I was thinking the Zions Bank thing was a victory for the cultural right in that companies are finally being like, hey, that's the line for us and we won't do it. But you're also seeing companies pull out of Florida. So it's kind of like maybe it's just the culture is bifurcating.
Why?
Yeah, I think it's bifurcation.
Why would banks be putting money into gay pride?
All kinds do. I mean, like they sponsor it and then you see their logo and you're like, I need to get a mortgage and I'll go to that bank. And
the same reason that they would sponsor like a half marathon or something like that. Just
I genuinely.
So it's for profit? It's because they're trying to get exposure?
Yeah. Not necessarily because they like it, although
not because they're trying to sow division or anything.
But I wonder what happened. Like what happened with Zions Bank where they were like, hey, sponsoring the sexualization of children probably is bad for our bottom line. You know what I mean?
I'm sure they just got a bunch of calls.
Yeah, and
Idaho Power did too, according to Chris Rufo. They also, they also made a similar statement. I think it's a win for the cultural right because what you're talking about that gaming company, they've been doing that for a long time. They were doing that a few years ago. Different companies.
The NCAA did it when they wanted specific bathroom laws.
Whoa. Boise Pride says it's postponing child drag show due to increased safety concerns. Good. No, I think it's because they're losing money.
Really? Yeah. See, that's what they do. It's the same thing with the Children's Hospital. They turn it into, now the story is not that children were involved. Now the story is that the right is so extreme and so radical and so violent that they are threatening the safety of children. The story is now conservatives pounce and not that, hey, we're enticing your kid to drag shows. This is always what they do. I highly doubt they're afraid for their safety.
It's dangerous to think that attempting to prevent a child from getting experimental surgery is the danger when the experimental surgery actually could be considered dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's either that or they're going to be like, oh, the safety threat is actually coming from the right. They're threatening our event, so we have to shut it down, sadly.
It shifts people's outrage. It shifts people's compassion. They forget what people were mad about in the first place and they're like, oh, those mean right-wingers.
This is clever. This is clever. What they're going to do now is they're going to say Zions Bank didn't just pull out, they threatened us with violence.
Yep.
They're going to say the statement they put out was stochastic terrorism. And now we're forced to shut our event down, Zions Bank. And the bank's going to be like, we didn't mean it. We're so sorry. This is war.
They probably will backtrack. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good, though, that they cave to pressure from the right. I mean, if this is what it is, then this is what it is. I
wish it would, the headline said, Boise Pride pulls event after major funder pulls out or whatever. And you can go into
after backlash because of child involvement.
I don't know that this is an accurate headline and that bothers me.
It's purposeful. It's totally purposeful.
And I think that probably the way that, so Zion is probably a regional bank. It serves a lot of people in Idaho. I assume maybe Utah, and people in those communities don't like whatever Boise Pride is doing. They don't like the drag shows, right? And in Florida, the gaming company is saying, we don't as a company like this value, so we're not going to support here. To me, this is more interesting, the Boise Pride, because it's coming from the community. People who bank with this bank are saying, hey, I don't like this, I don't want to do it. Whereas I really don't think any of the gaming customers, I would be really surprised if the gaming customers were like, hey, I'm going to stop attending your events or using your service if you don't specifically pull out of Florida. I think that is them trying to pressure Florida the same way that the NCAA tried to pressure North Carolina when it said we're not going to host, the NCAA basketball. I think it was basketball that year because that has a direct influence on revenue. It's a huge win for the state.
I think Republicans have a huge opportunity in this midterm to have a supermajority if they campaigned properly. And I think the campaigning is simple because a lot of people ask me, like, how do I get through to my family and friends? They're too woke. They don't listen. And I'm like, you don't argue with them. You feign interests. Like, you know, I shouldn't say feign, but like hear them out. And then you can simply respond with, yeah, man, you know, Trump, he can be scary. But I think the weird thing to me is all these child sex change surgeries that keep happening. And then when they say, what are you talking about? Be like, oh, I don't know. I was just reading something in like Washington Post about children getting sex changes.
Oh my gosh,
it was weird.
Show the picture of the 13-year-old with the
No,
double
hold
mastectomy,
on.
man. Those
Nope.
stitches across the chest are just visceral.
That's level 2. The first point is just to say, this is something that I find odd. And then don't fight with them, don't argue with them. And if they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, be like, oh, I don't know, here, let me show you. And then just pull up the article on child sex change surgery and then be like, yeah, here, like, they're whatever. I don't know. Are you? And then genuinely just don't be mean. Don't be like, it's wrong and you're supporting it. You got to be like, I mean, then you do what Ian said. You pull up the picture and be like, I don't know, you know, look at this picture and be like,
Crazy.
that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was just kind of like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
I had a guy, a professor from St. Mary's on my show, and I had him on because he said that the whole grooming thing, us calling people groomers on the left, was a part of an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that had to do with QAnon. So I wanted to have him on the show and ask him about that. And he claimed to be conservative himself and claimed to be a Christian. And so we kind of went back and forth, and I just like pulled up some articles and was like, do you support this? Here is an example of a teacher ideologically grooming a kid. Do you support like these teachers pressuring kindergartners to use they, them pronouns and just like make them kind of answer for that? Of course, you're not going to be that bombastic with a family member, but once they're met with those kind of specific examples and they have to answer for their support, he very quickly backed up and was like, well, no, and tried to kind of narrow his opposition. Once you can kind of make them do that, I think you can make them realize what's really going on.
Yeah, I think part of it is you also have to hear you have to hear past what they are using as an example to hear what the concern is, right? If you hear, well, Donald Trump is terrible and he's aggressive and he's rude and whatever else, like if they can't tie it to a specific example, it's that Donald Trump represents an ideology that is different than what they're used to. And they're not going to be receptive if you shout back at them. You have to understand where someone is coming from.
Yeah. My dad gets really loud. His name is also Tim. And he'll be like, Donald Trump, that guy. And he's like getting loud. And I'm just thinking like, I'm so happy because he's communicating with me. That's all I care about at that point. I'm just happy that he's letting it out.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
think
asked
there
him
are.
why he's so mad at Trump?
Next time I want to get deeper. Yeah. Last time my mom was like, oh, Tim, you're getting angry. And he's like, I'm not getting angry, Becky. I just think they're fucking hilarious.
But I do think part of it is like people are unwilling to have these conversations because we see discourse on things people disagree on as so volatile most of the time. It's better not to have the conflict. And I think part of that is on you. You have to control how you react and keep yourself accountable to being civil and, you know, talking with compassion as much as you can about these issues while not just compromising your viewpoint, right? Like you have to be honest about how you feel. I think so often people are afraid to say like, I actually don't agree with you because they think the fallout will be so bad. And it doesn't have to be.
We need more courage. You know, I mentioned this before. It is not courageous for the people who work here on this show to say our opinions because we know we have a company where our opinions you're allowed to say.
Right.
Courageous is the guy who works at a steel mill who speaks up and says it. Courageous is the person who works at a school who speaks up and says it. And it's tough, but we need more people to stand up and just be like, hey, man, the child sex change thing is a line too far. Like, I ain't going there. I ain't voting for those people. If you can't, that's the thing. If you as a regular old American cannot publicly say, I refuse to vote for child sex change surgery, then we're screwed. We're seriously, because like that story to me was just like, yeah, that's beyond the line. You know, like for me, I voted for Trump, in 2020 for a variety of reasons that did not broach children getting sex change surgery. Now we're at that point where I'm kind of like, how could any reasonable person who agrees with us keep quiet now, knowing this stuff has been happening? Children, young girls, some as young as 13, getting double mastectomies.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, unfortunately, I spent a lot of time on white woman Instagram and liberal woman Instagram, which is the worst place on earth. And you would be surprised at the number of like suburban, kind of conservative Christian moms who buy this idea that, well, it is compassionate to allow kids to do this because they might commit suicide, or I don't have a say in this, their doctors, their parents know best, or who believe in like the propaganda about not being able to get miscarriage care. There's a lot of misinformation. It's what we were talking about, like that toxic empathy piece that I think so many women, especially Christian women, are just totally manipulated by. They're just manipulated by the maxims that trans women are women and things like that. And so, I mean, that's how they're drawn in. Fake compassion, toxic empathy. It's pretty easy to get people to believe anything if you tell them that doing so makes them sound like a good person.
You mentioned toxic empathy. I think it's fascinating. Is that what you wrote about in a book, or was this just something you've been focusing on?
Well, it's something, and it's not just me. It's something that a lot of, I would say, like conservative Christians have been talking about for a long time, because there's such a problem of progressivism within the church, and it's this idea that we have to lead with empathy, we have to see with empathy, we have to discuss everything with empathy. I'm like, look, empathy has its place. It can be really good to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but if that's the only thing that you're doing, then you're going to make really stupid decisions, because you don't look at the facts, you don't look at what's true, you are partial in your judgment making, you're deferring to one person over the other because you think it's compassionate to do so, and it's going to make you make decisions that have really bad consequences, like open borders, like social justice crime policies, because you're told that's empathetic. They have deadly consequences.
I think that there are a lot of women, and maybe you would know more about this from your social media stalking, but I think there are a lot of women who fear being bad moms and doing wrong by their child, and so it's easy to then say, like, well, if their doctor says it's a good idea to do this, I'll just commit to this lifestyle, because I don't want them to ever look back and be like, you're the one who made me suicidal. You're the one who made me depressed.
Well, sure. And Abigail Schreier would definitely say there are people like that, but it's more the women who go along with it. Their kids aren't involved, but, you know, who just go along with it.
But they want their kids to have the friends.
Well, they're more concerned about how other moms see them.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.